The cold was a living thing, a beast with teeth of ice that gnawed through Kelly's threadbare coat and bit down to the bone. She couldn't feel her feet anymore, hadn't felt them for hours, maybe days, and the snow that fell in thick, relentless sheets had long since stopped melting against her skin. It simply accumulated, as if winter itself was trying to bury her before death could claim her properly. She'd wedged herself into the narrow space between a boarded-up chandler's shop and the stone wall of a granary, close enough to the market square that someone might find her body come morning, far enough from the main thoroughfare that the city guards wouldn't drag her away before she froze. Not that it mattered much now. Her body was shutting down. She could feel it in the way her thoughts came slower, the way the world seemed to be receding down a long, dark tunnel. I'm not supposed to die here. For weeks ago, she'd had warmth. A narrow servant's bed in the palace dormitories, scratchy wool blankets that smelled of lye soap, but hers. She'd had purpose, steady hands that polished silver until it gleamed, that scrubbed marble floors until they reflected like mirrors, that braided her own pale blonde hair before dawn each day. She'd had her mother's silver locket, the only thing of value she'd ever owned, warm against her chest. She'd had invisibility, that particular servant's gift of being present but unseen, useful but forgettable. Now she had snow and stone and the metallic taste of blood from her cracked lips. Kelly's fingers, what she could still feel of them, traced the rough stone behind her, grounding herself in something solid. 1, 2, 3, 4. She counted her breaths, a rhythm to anchor herself to consciousness. The market square had emptied hours ago, the last merchants packing their unsold goods and hurrying home to fires and families. Their voices had carried across the frozen air, complaints about the brutal winter, worry about supply shortages, speculation about the Alpha King's increasing isolation. That last topic had made something twist in Kelly's dying chest. The state banquet. That's where it had all started. She could still see it if she closed her eyes, the great hall ablaze with candlelight, hundreds of nobles in glittering finery, and her in her simple server's uniform, practically invisible as she poured wine and cleared plates. Kevin S. Raftery, the Alpha King himself, had been addressing the assembled court, his voice commanding attention from every corner of the vast room. And then he'd paused. Mid-sentence. His eyes scanning the crowd as if searching for something. And landing on her. 5 seconds. Maybe less. His gaze had found hers across that crowded hall, and Kelly had frozen, wine pitcher still tilted over a duchess's glass. She'd seen something flicker in those dark eyes, confusion? Recognition? Something unnamed that made the air between them feel charged, impossible. Then he'd looked away, continued his speech, and Kelly had finished pouring wine with shaking hands. 5 seconds that Linda Corvus had noticed. The king's advisor, brilliant and ruthless, with ambitions that made courtiers nervous and enemies disappear. She'd been watching the king closely, she always was, and she'd seen that moment of connection. Within a week, the accusations had started. A sacred royal seal, missing from the king's private study. The same seal discovered in Kelly's quarters during a surprise inspection, wrapped carefully in cloth and hidden in her mattress. Kelly had tried to explain. I've never seen that before. I'm not even allowed in the king's study. Please, there's been a mistake. But who listens to a maid when an advisor speaks? The guards had been almost gentle as they'd escorted her out. No trial. No investigation. Just Linda's cold, satisfied smile and the captain's apologetic murmur, "Can't have thieves in the king's house, miss." You understand? Kelly had understood perfectly. She'd also understood that without references, without proof of service, she was unemployable. The palace mark on her dismissal papers might as well have been a brand, thief. Untrustworthy. Untouchable. So she'd ended up here, in the spaces between, learning that survival demanded a perfection she'd never achieved even in service. That invisibility wasn't enough when winter itself hunted you. That the cold was, in the end, democratic, it killed nobles and maids alike, though maids died in alleys while nobles died in their beds. 1, 2, 3. She'd lost count. The numbness was spreading. Soon she wouldn't feel anything at all. A sound cut through the howling wind, footsteps, heavy and purposeful, crunching through snow. Kelly's eyes snapped open. Her body tensed despite its frozen state, instinct overriding dying nerves. The footsteps were measured, deliberate. Multiple sets. Not late-night merchants. Not drunks stumbling home. The entire Eastern District, Your Majesty, and still no sign. A male voice, breathless, as if they'd been walking for hours. Perhaps we should return to the palace. The storm is worsening. Your Majesty. Kelly's heart, sluggish and slow, suddenly hammered against her ribs. No. It couldn't be. Alpha Kings didn't patrol frozen streets at midnight. They didn't search alleys where the desperate died quietly. We continue. Another voice, deeper, rougher, edged with command and something that might have been desperation. I want to see every district. Not the version my advisors curate for me. The real city. Your Majesty, it's not safe. I'm the Alpha King, Marcus. A bitter laugh. If I'm not safe in my own capital, in the darkest corners of my own city, then we've failed in ways that matter far more than personal safety. The footsteps grew closer. Any moment they would pass her alcove. Kelly couldn't breathe, whether from the cold or from shock, she didn't know. If they had torches, if the light fell at the wrong angle. She held perfectly still. A trick she'd learned as a child when her mother's gentleman callers had stumbled through their cramped apartment late at night. Stillness was safety. Invisibility was armor. But as the footsteps drew parallel to her hiding place, as torchlight flickered across the snow-covered stones, Kelly felt something she hadn't felt in 4 weeks. Heat. Not from her own dying body. From somewhere deeper. Something old stirring in her blood, responding to proximity to power, to him. And in her hypothermia-addled mind, she heard her grandmother's voice, a memory surfacing from childhood. Old blood runs in you, Kelly girl. The silver wolf of the northern line. Keep it hidden. Keep it secret. Or it will be the death of you. The torchlight swept across her alcove. And Kelly closed her eyes, embracing the invisibility that had once been her gift, praying it would be her salvation one last time. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. Kevin S. Raftery had walked these frozen streets for 28 nights. 28 nights of searching shadows and alleys, of questioning beggars and merchants, of haunting the places where the desperate went to disappear. Marcus, his most trusted guard, had stopped asking why 3 weeks ago. Now he simply followed, just set against both the cold and the questions he was wise enough not to voice. Your Majesty, please. Marcus's voice cut through the howling wind. The storm is reaching whiteout conditions. We should return to the palace. Kevin didn't slow. One more district. We've covered one more district every night this week. Then we'll cover another. Kevin's tone left no room for argument. His boots crunched through snow already shin-deep, the blizzard transforming familiar streets into an alien landscape. Somewhere in this frozen hell, she was out here. He knew it. Had known it every night since he'd learned the truth. The truth Linda had so carefully hidden. The truth that had come to light too late. 28 days. The number haunted him. 28 days since Kelly H. Green had been accused, convicted without trial, and cast out into the worst winter in living memory. 28 days since Kevin had returned from the Northern Territories to find her already gone, Linda's satisfied smile the first clue that something was catastrophically wrong. 3 days to uncover Linda's scheme. 3 days to realize an innocent woman had been sentenced to death by cold and starvation. And 25 days, 25 agonizing nights, of searching for someone who might already be dead. Your Majesty, even if we find her, Marcus hesitated. After this long, in these conditions. Kevin's hand tightened on the torch. We'll find her. He had to. This guilt that carved through his chest like a blade, this weight that made breathing difficult, it wasn't just about justice or honor. Something else pulled him through these frozen streets night after night. Something he couldn't name, didn't dare examine too closely. That moment at the banquet. Those 5 seconds when his eyes had found hers across the crowded hall and the world had tilted. He'd been mid-sentence, addressing the northern lords about trade agreements, when he'd felt something. A pull. A recognition that made no sense. His gaze had swept the room and landed on a serving girl with pale brown hair and eyes like storm clouds, and for those impossible seconds, he'd forgotten he was king. Then duty had reasserted itself, and he'd looked away. But he'd thought about her for days afterward. Had almost asked the household staff about her, then dismissed it as foolish. Kings didn't notice servants. Kings certainly didn't obsess over a passing glance. And then Linda had made her move. "Check that alley," Kevin ordered, gesturing to a narrow gap between buildings. Marcus moved ahead with his torch while Kevin examined a recessed doorway, knowing it was futile, knowing that after 28 nights, the odds of finding her alive were. "Your Majesty." Marcus's voice cracked with urgency. "Here. There's someone." Kevin ran. The alley was barely wide enough for his shoulders. Marcus's torch illuminated a horrifying scene, a huddled form pressed against the stone wall, so covered in snow she'd been invisible until Marcus had gotten close enough to see. Pale brown hair. A hand, blue-tinged and motionless, barely visible beneath the white. Kelly. Her name tore from Kevin's throat. He dropped to his knees in the snow, his torch falling, forgotten. His hands, steady hands that had held swords and signed death warrants without trembling, shook violently as he brushed snow from her face. Blue lips. Skin like ice. Eyes closed. Gods, no. He pressed 2 fingers to her throat, searching desperately for a pulse. There, thread-thin, slow as a dying clock, but there. Relief crashed over him so intensely it hurt. "Kelly. Kelly, can you hear me?" His voice broke on her name. The legendary control of the Alpha King, the composure that had never faltered through wars and crises, shattered like glass. She didn't respond. Didn't move. The snow had accumulated on her eyelashes, her hair, as if nature itself was trying to claim her. Something primal roared to life in Kevin's chest. His wolf, usually carefully contained, surged forward. Before he could stop himself, he threw his head back and howled, a sound of anguish and rage that echoed through the frozen streets, announcing to the city that its king had found something precious and nearly lost. "Your Majesty," Marcus started forward. "Don't touch her." Kevin's command came out as a growl. He was already stripping off his heavy fur cloak, the one lined with wolf pelt and designed to withstand northern winters. He wrapped it around Kelly's frozen form, then scooped her into his arms as carefully as spun glass. She weighed nothing. Gods, she weighed nothing. Had she been eating at all? Of course not. No one would hire her. No one would help her. She'd been sentenced to slow death, and he'd been too late to prevent it. But maybe, he wasn't too late to save her. "Marcus, clear the path. Now!" Kevin started moving, Kelly cradled against his chest. She was so cold. Too cold. He held her tighter, as if he could transfer his own body heat through sheer force of will. Her head lolled against his shoulder. And then, impossibly, her eyelashes fluttered. Gray eyes opened to slits, unfocused and confused. "Kelly." His voice was raw. "Stay with me. Do you hear me? Stay with me." Her lips moved. The sound that emerged was barely a whisper, more breath than voice. "You shouldn't have come." Something in Kevin's chest cracked. "I've been coming every night," he said fiercely. "Every single night. Since the moment I learned what had been done to you." Her eyes widened slightly. "Surprise?" Confusion, before sliding closed again. But he'd seen her. She was alive. That had to be enough. Kevin broke into a run, ignoring Marcus's attempts to help, ignoring the storm, ignoring everything except the woman in his arms whose pulse beat so faintly against his chest. The palace had never seemed so far away. Each second was an eternity. Each breath she took, or failed to take, was a knife in his gut. The palace gates loomed ahead. Kevin's roar preceded him. Open the gates. Guards scrambled. The massive doors swung wide. Kevin burst through into the entrance hall, where servants scattered in shock at the sight of their king, snow-covered and wild-eyed, carrying a frozen woman in his arms. Healers! The word was barely human, more beast than man. Get me healers now! The head housekeeper appeared, eyes wide. Your Majesty, what? Kevin kicked open the door to the nearest sitting room, protocol and propriety be damned. He laid Kelly on the divan near the fire, his cloak still wrapped around her, and turned to face the gathering crowd of shocked servants and guards. His eyes blazed with an alpha's command. When he spoke, every word carried the weight of absolute authority and the unmistakable promise of violence for anyone who failed him. Save her, Kevin said, his voice deadly quiet in the sudden hush. Or you'll answer to me. Kelly woke to softness. The sensation was so foreign after weeks of stone and frozen ground that for a moment she thought she'd died. Then pain bloomed, sharp and insistent in her left foot, a dull ache throughout her entire body, and she knew with certainty that the dead didn't hurt like this. Her eyes opened to unfamiliar opulence, silk bed curtains in deep crimson, a carved ceiling painted with gold leaf, windows that let in pale winter sunlight. Palace chambers. Panic seized her chest. She tried to sit up, but her body refused to cooperate. Easy, child. A woman's voice, calm and professional. An older woman in healer's robes appeared at her bedside. You're safe. I'm Marin, head physician. You've been unconscious for 3 days. 3, Kelly's voice cracked. I shouldn't be here. I was banished. If they find me, the king himself brought you here. Marin's expression softened. You nearly died, Kelly. Severe hypothermia, frostbite. She hesitated. We had to amputate 2 toes on your left foot. I'm sorry. The tissue was already dead when you arrived. Kelly stared at the ceiling, processing. 2 toes. She'd lost 2 toes. But she was alive. The king had. The door opened. Marin's head turned sharply. Your Majesty, she's just woken. Perhaps. Give us a moment, Marin. Kevin's voice, quiet but firm. Kelly's heart hammered. She couldn't see him from her angle, but she heard Marin's hesitation, then her retreating footsteps. The door closed with a soft click. Kevin moved into view, and Kelly's breath caught. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, his jaw shadowed with stubble. Had he been here all 3 days? Your Majesty, Kelly started, but Kevin raised a hand. Don't. His voice was rough. Don't apologize. Don't thank me. Just tell me the truth. He sat in the chair beside her bed, his dark eyes searching her face with an intensity that made her want to hide. Marin discovered something during your examination. Something that changes everything. Cold fear flooded Kelly's veins. No. Please, no. A birthmark, Kevin continued. On your left shoulder blade. Kelly's world tilted. Her grandmother's voice echoed through her mind, keep it hidden. Keep it secret. Or it will be the death of you. I need to see it, Kevin said quietly. I need to know if what Marin thinks she saw is real. With trembling hands, Kelly shifted, letting the blanket slip from her shoulder. She couldn't see Kevin's face, but she heard his sharp intake of breath. God's above, he whispered. It's true. Kelly closed her eyes. What did she tell you? That you bear the crest of House Silvercrest. Kevin's voice had gone hollow. A bloodline that's been extinct for 3 generations. A bloodline that once ruled the Northern Territories. A pause, heavy with implications. A bloodline with a claim to sovereignty older than my own. Silence stretched between them. Kelly felt tears slip down her cheeks. After everything, the cold, the starvation, the near death, it was this secret that would kill her. Not through cold, but through politics. Through fear of what she represented. My grandmother told me before she died, Kelly whispered. She made me swear never to tell anyone. Never to claim it. She said the Raftery dynasty would see me as a threat, and threats to kings don't survive long. Kelly. Kevin's voice was strange, not angry, not cold, but something she couldn't identify. Look at me. She forced her eyes open, forced herself to meet his gaze. What she saw there wasn't rage or fear. It was something far more complicated. We need to talk, Kevin said quietly, about who you really are. The evidence came in pieces, each one damning. Commander Hrothgar, Kevin's most trusted investigator, worked with methodical precision. Within 2 days, he'd extracted confessions from 3 palace guards. Linda had paid them handsomely to plant the royal seal in Kelly's quarters. The discovery had been theater, perfectly choreographed. But that was just the beginning. Your Majesty, you need to see this. Hrothgar spread documents across Kevin's desk, passenger manifests, death certificates, Linda's personal correspondence. Linda's been tracking people with northern lineage for at least 5 years. Anyone with even a rumor of Silvercrest blood. Kevin's jaw tightened. How many? 3 confirmed deaths. 2 disappearances. Hrothgar's finger tapped each name. A merchant who fell from his warehouse roof. A seamstress who drowned crossing a shallow river. A scholar who simply vanished. All had family histories connecting them to the old Northern Territories. She's been systematically erasing them. Kevin's voice was ice. And Kelly Green was next on her list. 1 week after Kelly's rescue, Kevin summoned Linda to the throne room. The court assembled, nobles, advisors, guards, all sensing something unprecedented. And there, standing beside the throne despite her obvious weakness, was Kelly herself. Linda entered with her usual composure, but Kevin saw the calculation in her eyes as she registered Kelly's presence. You're supposed to be dead, that look said. Linda Corvus. Kevin's voice carried across the chamber. You stand accused of conspiracy, false testimony, and attempted murder. Linda's expression didn't waver. Your Majesty, I'm certain this is a misunderstanding. Guards. Kevin gestured. 3 men stepped forward, their testimony delivered in flat, guilty voices. The bribes. The planted seal. The orchestrated inspection. With each word, murmurs rippled through the assembled court. Linda's mask finally cracked. Not into fear, but something colder. Conspiracy? She laughed, the sound sharp and brittle. I was protecting the realm. Protecting your throne from threats you're too blind to see. Threats? Kevin's voice dropped dangerously low. Oh, shall we discuss threats, Your Majesty? Linda's eyes glittered with malice. She turned to face the court, her voice rising. Shall we talk about why I wanted that girl gone? Shall we discuss the mark she bears on her left shoulder blade? Kevin moved, but too late. The damage was already being done. A silver wolf beneath a crown of 7 stars. Linda's voice rang out. The crest of House Silvercrest. She's not just some maid, she's the last living heir to the bloodline your great-grandfather destroyed. The throne room exploded. Nobles surged to their feet. Guards' hands went to weapons. The word Silvercrest echoed from stone walls like an accusation. She's been here all along, Linda continued, even as guards seized her arms. Living under your roof, bearing the mark of the true northern rulers. And you brought her back. You fool, you've invited your own destruction. Remove her. Kevin roared. But Linda was still shouting as they dragged her toward the doors, her voice rising to a shriek. The old blood will destroy you. The silver wolf will reclaim what was stolen. Mark my words, this kingdom will burn. The doors slammed shut. Silence fell, broken only by shocked whispers spreading like wildfire through the court. Kevin's eyes found Kelly across the chaos. She stood frozen, her face pale, her gray eyes wide with horror. Their gazes locked, and he saw her lips move, though he couldn't hear the words over the noble's urgent conversations. I never wanted this. Kevin remembered Kelly's words from her fever dreams, pawned Mama's locket, 2 days of bread. I'm sorry, Mama. He found the pawnbroker 3 days later in the lower city, a nervous man who kept glancing at the royal guards flanking Kevin's civilian clothes. The locket, yes, your maj, I mean, sir. Silver, with a strange clasp. Sold it last week to a. I'll pay triple what you got for it. Kevin placed a purse on the counter. And triple what you paid her. The locket was simple, tarnished silver with delicate engraving. Kevin turned it over in his hands, studying it. Something about the clasp felt wrong, too thick, too heavy. He pressed his thumbnail against the edge and felt it give. A hidden compartment. Inside, a letter. The paper was yellowed, the seal broken long ago. Kevin unfolded it with trembling hands and began to read. My dearest Kelly. If you're reading this, I've passed beyond the veil, and you've finally opened the locket as I taught you. The time has come for you to know the truth of your blood. The letter detailed everything. Queen Alara Silvercrest, last acknowledged ruler of the Northern Territories. Her daughter, who'd fled during the coup. Generations of hiding, of careful anonymity, of mothers teaching daughters to hide the birthmark and speak nothing of their heritage. You are the last, Kelly. The last true heir. But I beg you, do not claim it. The Raftery dynasty will see you as a threat. They've rewritten history to erase us. To them, you are an impossibility that must be eliminated. Live small. Live quiet. Live safe. That is my final wish for you. Your loving grandmother, Meredith Silvercrest Green. Kevin's hands shook. He went immediately to the royal archives. Open everything, he commanded the chief archivist. Every sealed document from my great-grandfather's reign. I want the truth. It took 2 days to find it. Hidden records, locked away and forgotten. The real history, not the sanitized version in official texts. His great-grandfather hadn't inherited the throne. He'd taken it. Betrayed his co-sovereign, murdered Queen Alara's family, and rewrote history to legitimize the Raftery claim. Everything Kevin had been taught about his noble lineage, the divine right, the heroic ancestry, was built on blood and lies. Kevin stood in the archives as dawn broke, surrounded by the evidence of his family's original sin, and felt his entire identity crumble. He found Kelly in the healing wing, staring out a window at the snow-covered city. Without a word, he placed the locket in her hand. She looked down at it and went very still. Where did you? I found the letter. Kevin's voice was hollow. I know everything. Kelly's fingers traced the locket's edge. My grandmother told me before she died. Made me swear never to speak of it. Her voice broke. I just wanted to be invisible, Kevin. I wanted to scrub floors and be forgotten. I never wanted your throne. It's not my throne. The words came out flat, factual. It never was. Kelly turned to face him, tears streaming down her cheeks. What are you saying? My great-grandfather was a murderer and a usurper. My entire dynasty is built on a lie. Kevin met her eyes. Your claim predates mine by 2 centuries. By every law of succession, you are the rightful ruler of this kingdom. No. Kelly shook her head violently. No, I don't want. I know. Kevin reached out, and their hands met, fingers intertwining in a gesture neither of them had planned. But want doesn't change truth. They stood like that, hands clasped, 2 people bearing the weight of a secret that could destroy a kingdom, feeling something neither could name passing between them like an electric current. The secret spread like fire through dry timber. Within days, whispers of Silvercrest blood had reached every corner of the capital. Nobles held urgent midnight meetings. Merchants debated in taverns. Even servants chose sides, their loyalties fracturing along lines that had been invisible just weeks before. The Royal Council convened in emergency session. The girl must die. Lord Commander Brecken's fist slammed the table. Every day she lives is a threat to stability. To the crown. To the realm itself. Stability built on lies. High Counselor Thane shot back. The Silvercrest claim is legitimate. Ancient law demands the king abdicate in favor of the true heir. You speak of civil war, Brecken snarled. You speak of murder. Thane rose, his voice shaking with rage. And yes, if you execute the rightful queen, there will be war. The northern territories will rise. We will drown in blood. Moderate voices tried to intervene, but were shouted down. The council chamber became a battleground, 2 factions hardening into positions from which neither would retreat. And beyond the palace walls, worse news arrived. Your Majesty. Commander Rothgar's face was grave as he presented the intercepted letters. Linda's network sent intelligence to 4 neighboring kingdoms before her arrest. They know about Kelly's bloodline. They sense weakness. Kevin read the demands: abdicate or face invasion. Your reign is built on usurpation. Step aside, or we will step in. The kingdom was fracturing from within and threatened from without. Kelly found herself confined to palace chambers, ostensibly for protection. But she recognized a prison when she saw one. Guards stood at her door, though whether to keep assassins out or her in, she couldn't tell. Their eyes held fear now. Fear of what she represented. She'd become the thing her grandmother had warned her about: visible. Dangerous. A symbol people could rally behind or destroy. The attempt came on the 7th night. Kelly woke to the sound of her door opening, too quiet, too careful. 3 figures in dark clothes, blades catching moonlight. The guards who should have been outside were nowhere to be seen. Brecken sends his regards, one whispered, moving toward her bed. Kelly rolled, falling to the floor as a blade slashed where her head had been. Her heart hammered. Her healing foot screamed in pain. She scrambled backward, weaponless, cornered. The assassins advanced. Kelly opened her mouth to scream. And something else came out. Stop. The word crashed through the room like a physical force. It wasn't her voice, it was command, pure and absolute, carrying weight that made the air itself seem to solidify. All 3 assassins froze mid-step. Their eyes went wide, pupils dilating. Guards burst through the door, also freezing at the sound. Everyone in the room stood paralyzed, caught in the grip of an alpha voice more powerful than any they'd ever heard. More powerful than even the king's. Kelly stared at her own hands, trembling. She could feel it, the power thrumming through her veins, the ancient blood awakening, the authority she'd suppressed her entire life now blazing like a sun. What? She whispered. What have I? The door slammed open. Kevin stood in the doorway, taking in the scene: frozen assassins, terrified guards, and Kelly in the center, her gray eyes now carrying a silver sheen that marked true alpha power. Their eyes met. In the guards' fearful faces, in the way even Kevin's own men had instinctively obeyed her command, the truth was undeniable. Kelly wasn't just an heir in bloodline. She was an alpha in power. Stronger, perhaps, than Kevin himself. The council will demand answers by morning, Kevin said quietly, his voice carefully neutral even as something shifted in his expression, recognition, perhaps, or resignation. Kelly looked down at her hands, still shaking, and felt the weight of invisibility finally, irrevocably shatter. There was no hiding now. Sleep wouldn't come. Kelly lay in her guarded chambers, staring at the ceiling, feeling the new power humming beneath her skin like a caged beast. The guards outside her door shifted nervously, they'd seen what she could do, and their fear was palpable. At midnight, she rose. If she was a prisoner, she might as well learn what she was imprisoned for. The archives were supposed to be locked, but Kelly's newfound alpha authority made the night watchman step aside without question. She slipped into the vast chamber, lighting a candle, moving past rows of recent records toward the oldest sections. There, behind a false wall she discovered purely by accident, a loose stone that shifted when she leaned against it, Kelly found documents the archivists themselves had forgotten. The paper was ancient, crumbling at the edges. But the words were clear. The Compact of Dual Sovereignty, dated 237 years ago. A treaty between Houses Silvercrest and Raftery, establishing a revolutionary system of shared rule. 2 thrones, 2 crowns, 2 voices with equal authority. Each house would check the other's power. Neither could act without the other's consent. Tyranny, the document declared, flourished in singular power. Balance required too. Kelly's hands shook as she read further. The compact had lasted 3 generations. By all accounts, it had been the kingdom's golden age, prosperity, justice, peace. Until Aldrich Raftery, Kevin's great-grandfather, had shattered it. The betrayal was documented in letters hidden beneath the treaty. Aldrich inviting his co-sovereign to a private dinner. The poison. The assassins waiting for the Silvercrest heirs. The purge that followed. And finally, the burning of records, the rewriting of history, the consolidation of absolute power. The current crisis wasn't new. It was history echoing across centuries. Kelly gathered the documents and went to find Kevin. Dawn was breaking when she entered his study without knocking. Kevin looked up from his desk, exhausted and hollow-eyed. He'd clearly been awake all night. "Kelly, you shouldn't. Your great-grandfather didn't just steal a throne." Kelly spread the documents across his desk. He broke something essential. Something the kingdom was built on. Kevin stared at the ancient treaty. As he read, color drained from his face. "Dual sovereignty," he whispered. They ruled together. As equals. The kingdom wasn't meant for one ruler, Kelly said. It was designed for 2. Balanced power. Mutual accountability. That was the foundation of the realm's original peace. She met his eyes. "Your ancestor destroyed it. And we've been suffering the consequences ever since." Kevin stood, pacing to the window. "Everything they built, everything I believed about rightful rule, it's all predicated on an ancient betrayal." His voice was raw. "My absolute power isn't the natural order. It's the aberration. The kingdom's tearing itself apart because the balance was broken," Kelly said quietly. "Brecken wants me dead. Thane wants you abdicated. Neither solution addresses the real problem." Silence stretched between them. Then Kevin turned, something resolute hardening in his expression. "What if we restored it?" Kelly's breath caught. "Kevin. The compact. What if we brought it back? Dual sovereignty. 2 thrones, 2 rulers." His eyes blazed with sudden certainty. "It's the answer. It's been the answer all along." "I could disappear," Kelly said desperately. "I can vanish. I've done it before. The realm needs stability, not more chaos. You keep your throne, I renounce my claim publicly, and—" "No." Kevin's voice was fierce. He crossed to her, gripping her shoulders. No more running. No more hiding. Not for either of us. They'll never accept it, Kelly whispered. The council, the nobles. My ancestor destroyed the balance. Kevin's jaw set with determination. Maybe it's time we restored it. They'll call it weakness. Capitulation. They can call it whatever they want. Kevin's hands remained steady on her shoulders. We do this together, Kelly. Co-sovereigns. The way it was always meant to be. Kelly searched his face, seeing the conviction there, the willingness to risk everything. Then we'll make them accept it, she said finally. Together. The Great Assembly had never seen anything like this. Nobles in silk and jewels stood shoulder to shoulder with guild masters in leather aprons, village elders in homespun wool, merchants, farmers, even common laborers. The throne room, traditionally reserved for the highborn, now held hundreds of people from every level of society, many seeing its splendor for the first time. Kevin stood before his throne, Kelly at his side. The ancient treaty documents lay displayed on a table for all to witness. I have called you here, Kevin's voice rang clear, to acknowledge a truth that has been hidden for too long. My great-grandfather did not inherit this throne through rightful succession. He took it through betrayal and murder. Shocked murmurs rippled through the crowd. Several nobles gasped. He destroyed the compact of dual sovereignty, a system where two houses ruled as equals, checking each other's power, ensuring justice for all. Kevin gestured to Kelly. And he attempted to erase the Silvercrest line entirely. He failed. Kelly H. Green stands before you as the last heir of that murdered bloodline. Her claim to sovereignty is older and more legitimate than my own. The throne room exploded. Treason! Lord Commander Brecken roared. You admit your own illegitimacy? I propose we restore what was broken. Kevin's voice cut through the chaos. Dual sovereignty, co-rulers with equal authority. A new council representing not just nobility, but guilds, villages, all people. A kingdom where power is shared, not hoarded. The nobility erupted in outrage. Nobles surged forward, shouting accusations of weakness, madness. Brecken's hand went to his sword. I will not serve a kingdom ruled by a maid. Enough. Kelly's alpha voice crashed through the throne room like thunder. Every person froze, the command reverberating off stone walls. In the sudden, ringing silence, Kelly stepped forward. You speak of bloodlines and legitimacy as if they justify anything. Her voice, though quieter now, carried to every corner. I was a maid. I scrubbed your floors. I served your meals. And when one of you decided I was inconvenient, I was thrown into the street to die. She turned slowly, meeting eyes throughout the crowd. I know what it means to be powerless in this kingdom. To have no voice. No recourse. No justice. And I am not alone. How many of you, she gestured to the common folk, have suffered under absolute power? How many have watched nobles escape consequences while you bear the weight of their mistakes? My grandmother once told me, power hoarded is power corrupted. I don't want this throne for myself. Kelly's eyes found Kevin's. But I will accept it alongside King Kevin, as equal partners. Because this kingdom needs what it was designed to have, balance. Accountability. A system where no one, highborn or low, can be thrown into the cold without justice. The throne room held its breath. Kevin descended from the throne. With deliberate steps, he crossed to Kelly and extended his hand before hundreds of witnesses, an offer, an alliance, a revolution compressed into a single gesture. Kelly's fingers intertwined with his. Together, they turned to face the assembly. Lord Commander Brecken's face was purple with rage. He spun on his heel and stormed out, a dozen noble families following. But High Counselor Thane slowly, deliberately, knelt. Other nobles followed, some reluctantly, some with tears. The common folk erupted in cheers, weeping openly. For the first time in their lives, they'd been heard. Then, cutting through celebration, emergency horns blared from the walls. A guard burst through the doors. "Your Majesties! Enemy armies have been spotted at 3 borders. They're demanding King Kevin's abdication." The throne room fell silent. The celebration died. Kevin and Kelly's eyes met, their hands still clasped. Their alliance was about to face its first and deadliest test. War had come. The coronation proceeded as enemy armies massed at the borders. "This is madness," High Counselor Thane whispered as priests prepared the ceremony. "We should be mobilizing defenses, not." "We're showing them we won't be intimidated," Kevin said quietly. "We transform this kingdom now, or we lose it entirely." The throne room filled despite the threat. Those who'd stayed, nobles who'd chosen the new order, common folk who'd never had a voice, witnessed history. Kevin stood before the assembled court, the crown heavy in his hands. Then, in a reversal that made the priests gasp, he turned to Kelly and placed it on her head first. "I crown you, Kelly, co-sovereign of this realm, equal in authority, equal in power." Kelly's hands shook as she lifted the second crown, newly forged, identical to Kevin's. "I crown you, Kevin, co-sovereign of this realm. Together we rule. Together we serve." They spoke their vows in unison. "We pledge to share power, to check tyranny, to serve all people equally. Neither of us above the other. Neither of us alone." The throne room erupted in cheers. Then the massive doors burst open with a thunderous crash. Everyone froze. Guards drew weapons. But the figures entering weren't soldiers. They were diplomatic envoys, bearing flags of 4 neighboring kingdoms, led by ambassadors in formal regalia. "We come to negotiate," the lead envoy announced, "not to conquer." The throne room held its breath. Over the next hours, an unprecedented summit unfolded. The enemy kingdoms, it turned out, weren't seeking war, they were seeking a solution. Each faced succession crises of their own, contested claims, fractured houses, the same power struggles that had nearly destroyed Kevin's realm. "Your model," one ambassador said carefully, "of shared sovereignty. Our king wishes to know more." Kelly stepped forward. "It's built on a simple truth: absolute power corrupts absolutely. Balance requires 2 voices, 2 perspectives, mutual accountability." "And you've proven it works?" another envoy asked skeptically. "We've proven," Kevin said, his hand finding Kelly's, "that acknowledging past wrongs and choosing transformation is stronger than clinging to comfortable lies. The crisis dissolved not through violence, but through the radical act of honesty." By nightfall, preliminary treaties were drafted. War had been averted. 1 month later, twin thrones sat where one had dominated for generations. Kevin and Kelly issued their first joint decree before a throne room packed with people from every level of society, courts where common folk could challenge nobles. Representation for all classes. Pardons for those convicted without fair trial. As Kelly read her portion, Kevin watched with undisguised pride. As Kevin read his, Kelly's hand rested on his arm, partners in every sense. The kingdom was learning what shared power looked like. 1 year later, winter returned. Kelly stood at the palace window, watching snow fall gently on transformed streets. But these streets were different now. Shelters lined the market district. Food distribution centers operated in every quarter. No one huddled in frozen alleys. No one died alone in the cold. Kevin's arms wrapped around her from behind, his warmth surrounding her. She leaned into him, feeling safe in a way she'd never imagined possible that night when she'd been dying in the snow. Gently, she took his hand and placed it on her abdomen, where their child grew, the first child born to dual sovereigns in over 2 centuries. "Your grandmother would be proud," Kevin murmured against her hair. Kelly thought of Grandmother Meredith, of her warnings to stay hidden, of that terrible night when invisibility had nearly been her death. She thought of the secret that had ended an age of absolute power, and the partnership that had begun something entirely new. No, she said softly, watching the snow transform the city into something beautiful. She'd say we're just beginning. Outside, the snow fell gently on a kingdom learning its greatest lesson, that true strength lies not in one ruler's power, but in the courage to share it. Two figures stood silhouetted in the palace window, equal, united, and unafraid. The age of tyrants had ended. The age of balance had begun. The end. What did Kelly's grandmother's prophecy truly mean? What power will the child possess? If you want to discover more stories of hidden heirs, forbidden power, and kingdoms transformed by love, subscribe and turn on notifications. Like this video if you believe true strength comes from partnership, not domination. Comment below, would you choose the crown or choose freedom? What would you do in Kelly's position?